Thank you for joining us for this session of the Triad Family Web Series. We will begin in just a moment as we allow for folks to make their way in from the waiting room. As folks are trickling in, just a quick reminder that today's session is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel tomorrow, as well as emailed out to all registrants for this session. At any point throughout today's session, please feel free to utilize the question and answer feature located at the bottom of your screen. Just a couple quick reminders, please don't share any personal information. You have the option to submit questions anonymously, and we will address as many questions as we can. Not only will we host a live question and answer with tonight's panelist towards the end of today's session, but we also have a great deal of staff on the back end here just helping out answer questions off air. So please feel free to utilize the question and answer feature during any point of today's session. All right. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning to wherever you folks may be joining us for today's Triad Family Web Series session entitled Home Away from Home, Navigating Student Housing for Next Year. So we know this is a very important session, not just for first-year families whose students plan to return to living on campus, second-year families whose students are looking to either try and return, look to continue their guaranteed housing for certain programs, or are moving off campus for housing for next year. And we have the opportunity to really highlight a great panel of colleagues who cover the entire spectrum when it comes to housing. Today's session is done in partnership with Housing, Dining, and Hospitality, Student Legal Services, and the Basic Needs Hub. And as I mentioned, we've got a great selection of presenters today. And I'm not going to stand in their way any longer, as I know there's a great deal of information to get through. So I would like to introduce our first presenter, Malia Mahi, the Associate Director from the Housing Administration Office.
Thanks, Dan. I just want to say welcome to everybody. And yes, as Dan said, my name is Malia Mahi. I'm Associate Director for Housing Administrative Services. And what that means is our team manages the housing application, contract, and billing process for your student who is living here on campus with us. I've been with UC San Diego for 15 years. And I just want to share that I'm also a mother of a first-year college student. So we are having these same discussions in our house with our student. If yours is anything like mine, sometimes it is hard to get a definitive answer or even a deadline from them. So we hope that this information helps you to start these conversations, or that you have enough knowledge and information to share with your student and get the conversation started. And really, it's just all about supporting them and their housing decisions for fall of 2024. We do have a housing guarantee. So if your student was admitted in our undergraduate class for fall of 2023, that means either as a first year or a transfer, they were eligible for our 2-year housing guarantee. Our campus housing is optional. It is not mandatory for any of our students. And we do put a link in the chat that does give you more information about the housing guarantee and the criteria to maintain that guarantee. And kind of coupled with this guarantee, so we're going to talk a little bit about what makes you eligible for housing. It's really, really important to meet all the housing deadlines. And so for students who are in campus housing now and have a guarantee to continue on with us for fall of 2024, there's some really important deadlines coming up and a process that we call room selection. Room selection is the process for students currently living on campus with a housing guarantee to participate in an application contract process and a room selection where they actually go into kind of a virtual space and select spaces for themselves. And that's all going to be starting on February 21st. It's quite a few steps. We're going to put into our chat the room selection website as well as our deadlines and details page. This is a lot of dates. You're going to see we have them also on the next slide as well for your student to remember. So we're hoping that you can also help support them, help them bookmark pages, help them set reminders. We also will be holding a webinar for students with a guarantee with HDH on February 22nd. And your student can register for that webinar on our room selection page. If they're not able to make it during the time that it is scheduled, we will have it recorded and it will also be posted online on our room selection page by the following week. But in speaking about important deadlines, we want to make sure that you know step one is coming up pretty soon. So next week, starting on February 21st through the 28th, students can submit their housing application. There's no money due at this point. It's really, just submitting kind of their interest in the housing if they want to move forward for campus next year. In addition, students without a guarantee have also received an email. So if they are interested in coming back in campus housing for next year, during the same deadlines of February 21st to the 28th, they can submit their interest in campus housing as well. For those of moving on with a guarantee, the next step is going to be the housing contract and submitting a $450 prepayment, which is part of the housing contract process. Those dates are March 5th through the 12th. And again, very important to make sure that they meet those deadlines. If they don't meet those deadlines, they will not continue in through the process and they will lose any applicable housing guarantee that they have. Additionally, we have other housing eligibility criteria that you might want to consider and make sure that you're talking through with your student. So again, we're really going to hammer home meeting all the housing deadlines, making sure you do that application and contract on time. They do need to have lived on campus and completed the full terms of their contract, so they didn't cancel or terminate their contract for this year. In order to be eligible for housing, your student does have to be registered full-time, which is defined as 12 units. We want to make sure that they don't have any outstanding account balances that might be past due. And I'm sure you'll assume that they have to maintain compliance with any university deadlines and any university policies as well. And here's the page with lots of dates. And so you can see it's quite intensive as far as when things are happening in conjunction with the room selection process. This information is straight for our website. So we've dropped that page in called Deadlines and Details. Again, I would highly recommend bookmarking that page and setting reminders if you're interested in supporting your student and helping them to remember when things are due. So again, the dates we want to point out here are the application process is going to go through the 21st to the 28th. The contracting process will go through the 5th through the 12th, and that also includes their prepayment of the $450. Once they have completed that process, they can move on to apply. This is all optional for a living learning community, iHouse, or to opt into the gender inclusive housing. April 3rd, students will find out if they've been accepted into the living learning or iHouse, or they can opt out. So if it no longer interests them to be a part of those communities, they can opt out of that as well. On April 11th, there will be an email sent to the UC San Diego email regarding when their lottery date and time will be occurring for them, as well as their group PIN for room selection sign up. And they also will be able to view that through their housing portal. The housing portal is where they've done their application, their contract, and they can see their information in the housing portal. And then going April 13th through the 26th, we call it the vacancy viewer, and that will be available online, again, via the housing portal. So your student's college or housing location will have a very specific assigned date where they will need to complete their room selection and sign up process. So that's why it takes so long, because we're now up to 8 colleges, plus we have our transfer housing at the village. And then it also includes some of the living learning community selections, as well as the gender inclusive housing and iHouse. So you can see that spans kind of a greater time. And again, for your college or location of your student, they will have a very specific date and time to sign up for that. And then we'll move into May 1st, where they will be able to select a dining plan and also view their apartment and roommate information in the housing portal. Students will have until May 13th to adjust their dining plan. And then we do open it up again a few times a year for them to make changes as well. And then they can adjust that, like it says here, until mid to late August. The last day to see their current apartment mate and roommate information until the roommate assignment opens up, usually in August, will be May 13th. So again, these are all available on our website. We highly recommend bookmarking those pages. I use my Outlook calendar for everything, but however, you might need to remind yourself or help your student remember when these dates are going to occur. So for dining plans, we do have a flexible dining plan. It is designed as an a la carte system. My student goes to SDSU, so it's a swipe system, which is quite different. It is a declining balance plan, and it's all packaged together with your housing contract. So they can do a quick stop for a pre-class snack. They can get a hearty dinner. They can get some coffee after a long study day or some dessert. And then they can stop by any of our 15 or more dining and market locations on campus. We do want to let you all know, just for transparency, that we do not yet have the confirmation of the dining package rates for 24-25. So we do hope to post them online shortly. They are going through a final approval process with their undergraduate advisory committee. And so those costs will be placed online on our rates and services page. And that will be available to your student before the contracting process starts on March 5th. We do recommend, if your student isn't sure what to select, that you pick the lowest dining plan, because you always have the ability to add more money to the plan if needed. And then we just want to make sure that your student is aware that they can make their dining plan selection May 1st to the 13th, and that they do have other opportunities to change that dining plan throughout this process. The last day to change their dining plan for the academic year of 2024-25 will be October 2nd. And then what we also think is interesting is that your student is going to kind of couple the dining plan with where their assignment is. If they were a new incoming student last year, you typically are blindly picking a plan when you're doing the contract process. Now you're going to be able to see, or your student will be able to see, where they've been assigned and maybe make a more educated choice. And we are very excited to welcome our newest community, which we are calling Pepper Canyon West. These are all apartments that are opening for fall of 2024. We will be giving priority to our transfer student population. And then if there are vacancies available, will be followed by students who are considered upper division with a guarantee. The students are going to be able to make their decision as part of their contracting process. So they're either going to have the chance to choose a 9-month contract, which would place them in our traditional communities. And for transfer students, that would be the Village, which includes Pepper Canyon and Matthews Apartments, or the Rita. Or they have the option to pick a 12-month contract, and that is specifically for Pepper Canyon West. These units are all furnished. They are all singles. They are 6 and 8 bedroom apartments. The dining plan is optional, just like it is for the Pepper Canyon and Matthew Apartments, as well as the Rita. And the great thing about the 12-month contract is it will allow the students to remain on campus during the summer. They will not be required to be registered for summer classes. So maybe there's an internship they're interested in doing. Maybe they're going to be working on campus. Maybe they just like San Diego and they want to hang out here during the summer. And the other benefit is that the rate is going to drop down to $900 per month in the summertime. So we're really excited. We hope your students get excited about it as well. If your student was eligible for Pepper Canyon West, they would have received an email on February 2nd, letting them know that their student status makes them eligible for this space with some information. Well, basically the same information we provided you here. And so some of the questions we get is how, roommates and apartment mate selections. So students can add roommates or apartment mates. It is based on factors. They do have to be in the same room selection community, as well as the same room selection category. They do need to have the same gender markers. So if I identify as a female, unless we've selected gender inclusive housing as a group, then people who are going to be in my roommate group would also need to be gender marked as a female. It is limited to adding up to the largest apartment size or suite size. So let's just say we have lots of friends and there's 8 of us that want to live together. We can't select an apartment that only has 6 spaces. And then each student that participates in room selection sign up, they're going to have a PIN. And if they have a group of people that they're looking to room with, The strategy is that you share your PIN with the person that has the earliest lottery date and time, and that person is going to go in and make the selection for all of you. It's really important if your student is doing this that they have several plans together. We recommend like an A plan, B plan, C plan, D plan. A would be everyone gets the space in the exact apartment that you want. B might be maybe we're all in the same apartment, but we're not in the same rooms. C would be maybe same floor. D might be same building or same community. And then you also want to make sure your student is aware that when they give their PIN to someone else, it is giving consent to that person to make those room decisions for them. So occasionally, not often, but sometimes people see the opportunity to select a single and the roommate groups kind of fall apart. So just make sure that if they are going to participate in creating a roommate group or an apartment group, that they're fully aware of like who's making the selection, what the plans are, and that if something goes wrong, they can always email us at roomselection@ucsd.edu and we can look into the item further. So if things maybe don't work out quite as they wanted to, maybe your student's unsure of what they want to do next year. Maybe their guaranteed time is up and they don't have a guarantee. Maybe they did miss a deadline. We still have an option for your student. Our waitlist will open in mid-July for fall. Students can be sign up after that point. They offers are based on available space, and then we provide weekly updates on the waitlist page. Just want to make sure that students know that the waitlist application does not guarantee you a space. I do have to say, even this year in our over demand situation, we were able to make it through our waitlist twice in the fall. So it is possible for students to receive an offer. We just can't guarantee it. And so you might also have a student that likes to plan ahead or may already be thinking ahead of what they might be doing for the summer. So we just want to make sure that, summer housing is available for students on campus. There's 2 programs. So if your student's currently living with us on campus, they would be part of the Accelerate Summer Program. They would have to be registered in summer session courses to be eligible. And then for any incoming freshmen and transfer students, they would be enrolled in the traditional program. Typically, our application is coordinated with when enrollment is happening for summer session. So it's usually around mid-April. And we did put our summer housing website in the link. It does have the information from 2023. So you can kind of use that as a guideline if you're interested, kind of when the same deadlines might be occurring for this summer. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
And now I'd like to bring up our next presenter, Chairlyn Tinoco.
I believe, Dan, that you have to do my camera to turn off the camera. So sorry. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Carolina Tinoco, Carolyn Tinoco, and I am the Basic Needs Housing and Education Coordinator. So the basic needs, the off-campus housing office falls under the basic needs umbrella, and we offer resources to help guide you. So when your student is deciding to move off of to off-campus housing, that's where we come into play. We have an off-campus housing website. We have property search recommendations, roommate search platform and tips, first-time renting information, and we also carry off-campus housing events for your students. Next slide, please. So what I like to tell students is that the off-campus housing website is your best friend, and you want to start going in there and utilizing it early. The UCSD off-campus website offers rentals, subleases, roommate listings, and more. All the listings are vetted through our office. The website is for all UCSD members, including staff and faculty. The key thing is signing in with your UCSD user ID. That way you can get a personal account, you can view rentals, and then you can also do a roommate search. Next slide, and I can show you how that looks. So here's the website. So most students, they'll go to this website. You'll see it's the UCSD off-campus website, and they immediately start clicking that view rentals, or they'll scroll down and look view the rentals. And what I highly recommend is if you go on the top left corner, you will see it says sign in, sign up. That website is what you all need. Here's our QR code as well. Once the student is in there, they can utilize and look and search for individual subleases. It'll ask them, do you want a sublease just for winter quarter, fall quarter, summer quarter? What's your budget like? How close is it to campus? How long transportation would get to you? The website is run through in partnership with apartments.com, but again, signing in is only accessed for UCSD students, faculty, and staff, and all the listings on there are vetted through our office. So when a student goes and logs in, they can create a roommate profile. You can see that I've logged in, and this is what the roommate search will look like. This will show you how to connect with fellow UCSD affiliates looking for roommates. This is kind of like a profile that students can have, similar to like Instagram, social media, Facebook. So a student can put their picture in there. The students that are looking for roommates can also say if they have a place that they currently need a roommate to fill that spot, or if they need a place. It'll show them when they're looking for the place. It'll show even things such as gender identity, cleanliness, what year you're graduating in, if you're an undergrad or graduate student, do you have pets? So really utilizing this website is the best tool once students start thinking about off-campus housing. So we also advise students on a lot of here at my office about how to look for roommates. We also provide social events for students to help called roommate mixers on campus. But we also advise students to have important conversations with their potential roommates before moving in together. Meaning, how will they pay the rent? How will they divvy it up? When is that the payment dates, lease terms, the length of the lease? Cultural identity considerations, household preferences. What if, let's be real, smoking, drinking, substance abuse, overnight guest policies, noise levels, cleanliness, lease breaking scenarios. My office has dealt with a lot of students that quickly find roommates, move into a situation together, and then a couple months later find out that that might not be the best scenario for them, and then they will have to break their lease. So that's why we highly recommend students attend our roommate mixer events and find other potential roommates and ask these hard questions before they move in with one another. So renting tips for a competitive market. If you all did not know, San Diego County and San Diego City is the most expensive place to rent in the country right now. It goes San Diego, New York, and San Jose. So I like students to be realistic about their budget. And that's why we also steer them over to the website that we have. We want them to consider the rent, utilities, living expenses, and entertainment in their budget. We also advise them how to look at their financial aid and how they would budget that out each month. We ask students that they give them time to look for a place. So if they're considering moving from on campus to off campus, maybe start looking in the winter for summer places instead of waiting until the spring quarter. We like to remind students that there is rental application fees. Those are those hidden fees sometimes students forget to budget in when they're looking for off-campus housing. Some housing searches may be completed quickly, and then some takes a little longer. So students need to try to contact as many properties as possible. We also recommend that students consider areas outside of La Jolla. La Jolla has a competitive housing market, and it has a very limited availability because there's a lot of single room house or single homes here that are already for families. So we show students how to utilize our website by finding properties that are close to campus, such as University City, Claremont, Mira Mesa, Kearney Mesa. That we also, if they can, consider areas such as Central San Diego, East San Diego, South San Diego. And we highly also recommend that whatever properties they look at, especially if they're looking at any apartments, and they want to save in other areas such as gas or traffic time, consider public transportation. We do have the blue line that goes straight onto campus. It's a trolley system that goes straight onto campus. So those are some of the things we'd like students to consider so that they can maybe save on some of their rent and while they're budgeting. So first time renting tips. A lot of students do come to us a little anxious about moving, and we do one-on-one consultants with every student. We tell them to schedule tours, even if it's a virtual tour, whenever possible. That way they can get a feel, a vibe, as they say, for what the housing is like, what the area looks like, how close it is to campus. They can use a reverse image search on Google just to see what some of the areas are around them. And sometimes students don't use our website. I can understand that. They might use such things as Facebook groups or Craigslist. Well, I can't guarantee any of those property listings on there because they haven't been vetted through us. But if they do, we also educate them on how to find if it's a scam or not. So that's why we use the reverse image search. If the same picture shows up on the listing is not in San Diego, or it's not the same, it's fake. If it's too good to be true, it most likely is. And properties often do require 2.5 times the monthly income in comparison to the rent amount. Leases are legally binding documents. A lot of students are excited to get their first apartment off campus, and they sign the lease without thoroughly reading it. We always remind students to thoroughly reading it, as they are legally bound to it, whether it be a 9-month, 12-month, 13-month lease, even if they're a subletter. To review that document thoroughly, we also have partnerships on campus with our UCSD Student Legal Services, which we'll be speaking next. San Diego is a competitive market, we remind them, so just look at all options. And just again, that reminder, be wary of scam. If it seems too good to be true, it most likely is. So additional resources, again, I named that the off-campus housing office lives under the umbrella of the Hub Basic Needs Center. At the Hub Basic Needs Center, we call it the Hub, we provide resources for registered UCSD students, which includes access to nutritious food, stable housing, and financial wellness. So if your student may be needing assistance in other areas, we do help your students. We do highly recommend that they fill out a basic needs assistance form. We have a Triton food pantry that's open to all students and available on campus. We have a personal hygiene program where a student can come once a week. They scan their student ID card and they can get access to hygiene products. It could be Tide Pods, dryer sheets, diapers, baby wipes, toilet paper, menstrual products, condoms, sunscreen, but that is available to the students. We have housing consultations, as I mentioned, and we do have emergency housing options. It is a limited emergency housing options, but there could be where your student may be in between places and they need some emergency housing for that transitional period, then they would meet with me and we would go over their options. The two events that we have, which may not be for your students, but they are always every year here, is our next roommate mixer, which is February 29th, where students will meet on campus and just find other roommates because they're moving off campus. And every year in early spring quarter, we have an off-campus housing resource fair. When your student is ready to move off campus, that resource fair has property managers, has local resources from communities. Our student legal services are there. So these are things and events that students can look forward to once they're here on campus. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And next, I would like to introduce Giancarlo Senor, the Director for the Student Legal Services.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dan. And hopefully everybody can hear me okay. And I hope you all got a lot of great information to remember from Carolina, very important stuff to consider. My name is John Carlos Sr. I'm an attorney and I'm the director at Student Legal Services. So my office provides free confidential counseling, education, and referrals to all currently registered UCSD students. So in other words, as long as you have a student who's registered, they can come to our office and talk to us. And it's absolutely free and it's absolutely confidential. The student has to make an appointment, but I do want to thank you all. Nowadays, we get a lot of our referrals thanks to parents who are encouraging their students to come to our office and make an appointment. So thank you for that. So top 5 renting tips. I know that most of the questions are for on campus. Hopefully, I can provide some information to consider about off-campus housing as well. So if you could please go to the next slide. That, by the way, is not an off-campus house. That's one of our art installations on campus, but I like that it's in this presentation. So number one, of course, yeah, you got to watch out for scams. It's very difficult when you're not local, and that I just need to acknowledge that. But a lot of times, if a place, as mentioned before, if you find a reverse image search, if there's something about how somebody's out of town, so they can't meet up and show the place, but if you'll just send money, if there's an advertisement for an apartment, a unit, or a condominium, but they won't give out the number of the unit, that's a big red flag. So I always just encourage to not send money until somebody actually sees the place and until you have a contract in hand. Keep in mind that all tenants are jointly and severally liable. That's a fancy way of saying that if you have, say, 3 individuals on the lease as tenants, each one of them can be held liable for up to 100% of the obligations under the lease. So that means, of course, yeah, if the first of the month rolls around, one individual, one student, one tenant pays their share, but another one doesn't, then the landlord has the right to not just go after the one who didn't pay their share, but everybody who signed on to the lease. And where it's important for you folks out there who are generally parents and guardians who are asked to be co-signers. This includes co-signers and guarantors, which is, by the way, that's the same meaning. But in other words, if you co-sign on a lease as a parent or guardian, typically that means you're not just guaranteeing payment and not breaking the lease, not just for your one student, but for every single person. And in my experience, landlords don't tend to want to give individual leases to individual tenants. So you can expect that this is going to likely be the situation. It's tricky because, of course, as Carolina mentioned, a lot of times they're going to request, landlords are going to request proof of 2.5 times the income, 2.5 times the month for monthly rent, and that's very impossible for most students to do. So that's why they'll turn and ask for co-signers. So just understand that when you agree to be a co-signer, you have some pretty substantial liability there. You can, of course, encourage your student to use a roommate agreement. As you can see, we've got one on our website at studentlegalservices.ucsd.edu, sls.ucsd.edu. That can at least clarify what folks' understanding is in terms of who's going to pay what when it comes to their share, when it comes to utilities. You can craft it however you want to have it in terms of clarifying obligations and expectations. That doesn't overcome the joint and several liability but at least I think it's a good measure, a good start, at the very least, a good conversation piece so that folks know that they can be compatible. And then absolutely consider getting getting renters insurance for your students. So that will typically include personal property coverage. So that's coverage for loss, theft, or damage of an individual's personal property. And for those, you just want to be able to prove ownership of those things. So it's always good to keep copies of receipts for the big purchases, the phone, laptop, computer, a bicycle, that sort of a thing. That amount depends upon how much coverage is requested. There's also liability insurance, which is basically if an individual, like say a guest gets injured on the property, or if one of the tenants causes some sort of damage that they're responsible for, that's where liability coverage kicks in. Both liability and personal property coverage are frequently required by landlords. But I would even say, even if they're not required by landlords, you should still get it if you can afford it. The other really important type of coverage that you can get that's not with every policy is loss of use coverage. And that's basically if, say, something catastrophic happens at a unit, there's a flood, the floors need to be ripped out and replaced, the wall needs to be fixed, that sort of a thing. Then they might need temporary housing. So loss of use coverage basically pays for that temporary housing. It obviously doesn't happen very frequently, but I'll tell you that every year at Student Legal Services, we'll have a group of students who something, happened, a flood or some natural, leak or many other types of issues. I would again say get the best personal property coverage you can. It usually costs between $12 and $17. I don't have a particular company that I would recommend, though I'll tell you that that I get mine from Costco. You could, for those of you who have your own homeowner policies, you could maybe contact your insurance representative and see if it's possible to add your student onto your policy. And of course, you can get a discount by bundling policies. And suddenly now I sound like an insurance commercial, but I really do recommend as best as possible that you get the best renter's insurance as possible, and particularly if you're going to be a co-signer. That'll provide you with additional legal coverage that wouldn't otherwise exist. As I said, some landlords might require it, but even if it doesn't, or even if it does, get the best that you can afford. Next slide, please. And then the single biggest issue that we see at Student Legal Services pertains to security deposits. So an amount of money that that a tenant paid at the beginning of the lease that the landlord's supposed to hold on to and return at the end of the lease. And the best piece of advice that I can give you in terms of how to protect a security deposit, it's documenting the condition of the place upon move in and also upon move out. I can't tell you how many times I've met with students who are being charged with pre-existing damage before the student moved in. And the question is always, well, did you document the condition of the place when you moved in? So lots of pictures, again, before moving in, a single stick of furniture. A video is great as well, but make sure that you're able to find it. Also, and then of course, also do it when you move out. You're going to want to encourage your student also to fill out an inspection checklist. Pictures are better, but inspection check, some written documentation, the condition of the place is also good. And in fact, some leases will require that the tenant submit a list of any issues or problems within a certain number of days upon move-in. So it's good to make sure that one of those is done. Some landlords will provide an inspection checklist. You can also get one on our homepage. Your student's going to want to keep in mind that they're going to want to give at least 30 days prior written notice before the end of the lease. So even if the lease has a fixed end date, say June 30th, they're still going to want to inform the landlord at least 30 days, so May 31st, that's the deadline, to submit notice that they do not plan to renew their lease. Most landlords are good about reaching out and talking about renewals, but just keep in mind that if a student plans to move out at the end of their lease, even though the end date is fixed there, they still might need to give prior written notice. Tenants also have the right to request a pre-move out inspection that's written in the law and in the California Civil Code. And I absolutely encourage students to do that sort of pre-move out inspection. It's called the initial inspection under the statute, but I prefer the pre-move out because I think that's a little clearer. But either way, within the final 2 weeks before move out, it's important for the for the tenants to request a pre-move out inspection. And of course, if there are any issues that come up, a lot of times it's plumbing, but it can, of course, be any number of things. It's important to put any requests notifying whether the landlord or the leasing office or the owner of the issue or problem. Put those repair requests in writing and make sure that that you have a paper trail. And then, of course, lastly, if your student is ready to sign a lease or has any questions about them, please encourage them to come to Student Legal Services. Just so you know, we don't allow parents or guardians or other folks to make appointments for the students. We do ask that the students contact us directly, but if they do need any help, please don't hesitate to have them reach out to us. And that's about it. And of course, I'll hang out if there are any additional questions. And if you go to the next slide, please. And thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, John Carlos. I'd like to ask all of our presenters back on screen so that we can do some live Q&A. I just want to thank the folks who have been on and off screen who are answering questions, because, oh boy, there are a lot of questions coming through. So we're going to do our best to answer live some of the more questions we're seeing come up more often. If you do not have your question answered tonight and you need it answered, please feel free to reach out to parents@ucsd.edu, or if it's very housing contract related specific, it's going to be housing contracts at ucsd.edu, correct, Malia? And we will drop these email addresses in the end, and we will also share the email addresses for Carolyn and John Carlos, their departments as well. But we're going to do our best. So the first question I have is timely, and this is going to be for you, Malia. It's revolving around the 2024-25 FAFSA. Due to the issues with it and the delay that it is causing, this parent is asking, how will housing at UC San Diego handle the issue of students potentially not having a financial aid package in time to make a decision on housing?
That's a tough one. I just, before I got here, was in a discussion about how it's impacting many things, including the first year admit and statement of intent to register dates. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know how, this isn't really an answer, but I don't oversee financial aid, so we're all kind of just sending them love and grace right now because I know they're dealing with a lot. I think people are going to have to make the best decision they have available to them at the time. I know everybody's working really, really hard to try to work with the Department of Education to try to get those applications and try to get those packages approved on time. I know many of the people, the director, even the admissions people, everyone has your students' best interest in mind, and they know this is going to be one of the major decisions affecting where your students might be living. I don't know if you have other students going to college, where your students might be ending up going to college next year. So I don't really have an answer for that, but to know maybe what your plans are, maybe like I was saying, even for picking roommates, you have an A, B, and C plan for your students in place, because I can't guarantee when that's going to be going on or when it's going to be approved. I know typically they like to have the packages done in June, maybe no later than July, but this is a very special year. We've never seen this before. All the colleges are reeling from this, so I suspect no matter where your students are attending, a lot of people are being challenged with that same question, and my heart goes out to everybody who has to deal with this. It's not really it's not really an answer. I'm sorry.
Well, I will just share that I know that UC San Diego and is very aware of the issue and trying its best to work step by step and through department by department where this affects it, and be able to provide at most the best support for students affected. So thank you. Our next question, revolving accommodations from the Office of Student with Disabilities. If a student were to take a quarter off, do they use the waitlist process or do they go through a different process for obtaining housing?
They should do the waitlist process because if you're taking a quarter off, unless there's an extenuating circumstance or somebody's made an exception, typically the student will terminate and move out of their space. And then you would utilize the waitlist to return. It also depends on what kind of accommodation you have from the Office for Students with Disabilities. So I just want to make sure, typically it's about a 3-week wait, I think, now to get an initial appointment. So students should really make sure, or parents, if you're supporting them through this process, that they're making the appointments, that they have the documentation needed, and that they're very specific and the accommodation needs. Some students may have priority for housing, and that may bump them up to the top of the wait list. So I do think it's really important for students or whoever's going to help them to advocate for themselves what they need, and then make sure they're showing up for those appointments and have the appropriate documentation. It's really important.
Thanks for that answer. All right, this is pertaining to off-campus housing. So this may be for Carolyn or John Carlos. My student's an international student. How do we navigate living off campus?
That has always been challenging. Especially if they want to live off campus, we ask that you contact us as soon as possible. So that way we can do that one-on-one consultation with your student and kind of see the budget around that. There are other programs. I think like hugsliving.com is an a website that helps international students find other students, but really I recommend using our website and to do the one-on-one consultation with us. We do it for both just regular off-campus housing consultations, showing the student how to navigate, going through their budget with them. And then again, we also help students with emergency housing situations.
Yeah, and I would just follow that with, of course, unfortunately, a lot of our international students are targets for scams. Everybody is, of course, but of course, our international students are particularly susceptible. And so for that, yeah, I would absolutely suggest you go through sort of verified resources like the off-campus housing folks. I think everybody tends to know that Craigslist is mostly scams these days. There's some that are a little bit better but really, and I know this isn't an option for many folks, but if it is possible to somehow get someone local to check out a place and make sure it's valid, it's absolutely worth it. So whether that means traveling ahead of time to come by to visit or just finding a local trusted contact, I would just really highly recommend that.
Definitely reach out to us sooner than later. With this digital age, just FaceTime those folks that are showing those rooms to make sure it's not a scam. Could be very helpful as well if worst case scenario, you can't get someone local. And you can always vet it through our email as well. You can send it to us and we can tell you if we think it's a scam or not.
Great, thank you both. We have another question here. This is, I think, coming to you, Malia. My student's considering transferring away from UC San Diego, but will not hear back until will not hear back for transfer applications until April. Will all prepayments be refundable if she chooses to transfer out of UC San Diego?
Yes, good question. Right now, typically the cancellation policy for students who are continuing with us, you really have until, it's not posted yet, but it's getting prettied up by our marketing team, so it will be online shortly. You'll have until June 4th, I believe, to cancel. So if in April they're going to get the admissions decision from the other university, they still have a few months to do the cancellation, and they would do that through the housing portal.
Great, thanks. I think this is for the roommate mincers. Carolyn asking, where are they typically held, and how would a student know when these are occurring?
I did see that question. So first and foremost, but prior to me coming onto this role, that roommate mixer was only once a year. I now have them every single quarter, not during the summer. So every quarter we have a roommate mixer. Usually they're held in front of the hub, which is in our little courtyard. And then the one in spring is held on the library walk. How are your students going to find out about this? On social media. That's how they find out about everything. I highly encourage them to search for UCSD basic needs. That's where we get a lot of our student engagement and information out. And while they're there, do the search engine to look for UCSD and anything that catches their interest. They can follow HDH. I don't know, John, Carlos, if you all have an Instagram, but I highly recommend that that's where your students find the information. So yes, every quarter we have a roommate mixer. I also saw a question that I wanted to answer about storing options. Students, I've had this happen before. So public storage is a great place that usually stores things for the first month for free or $1. So when your student needs to storage things over the summertime, that could be a great option for you all. Because a lot of students, I was surprised, asked me that question. They didn't know where to store their things when transitioning or taking a break, that summer break. So just wanted to shout that out.
No, great. Thank you. All right, folks, I know there's a ton of more questions, but we are a little over time, so I do have one more to ask. And John Carlos, this is for you. Could my student bring a potential lease into an appointment with Student Legal Services to have a review before signing?
Yes, absolutely. Please have them call us, contact us, schedule an appointment. We also send an all-campus email out to all students, like in March, April, reminding them of the service. But yes, we absolutely encourage it, and truthfully, we go over many of the things that we talked about today in terms of renters insurance, in terms of liability for co-signers, in terms of assignment and subletting, and whether that's permissible under the lease. So that's the long answer. The short answer is yes. And thanks for the question.
Well, I just want to thank the three of you for your presentations tonight. I know there's a lot of information to cover, and thankfully this session is being recorded and will be shared out. As well, will the slide deck for all the wonderful resources you've put together with your teams will be sent out to all that have registered here this evening. But again, thank you for all that you do to help students with on and off campus housing, and good luck, as I know that we are just beginning the season for what fall 2024 housing looks like. So again, thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Trine Family Web Series. As I have shared, our presenters have covered a plethora of different resources. We have a particular slide that will cover all of the contact information and links to get in touch with their departments and other departments on campus that will support your student as they either return to live on campus or will be moving off campus for next fall. Also, we will be returning with another session for the Trine Family Web Series in March. More details will come, and we will be emailing not just this presentation deck, but also the recording out to all registrants tomorrow. If you'd like to rewatch this session with translated subtitles or share with a family member who may want to utilize the subtitle feature so that they can follow along in a different language, you may do so by utilizing the auto translate caption setting within the YouTube app. And these are the directions on how to do so. And finally, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to support your student. We really appreciate you spending an hour with us and our colleagues in discussing housing for next year. Please feel free to reach out to us at parents@ucsd.edu or stay connected with us through our brand new website, parents.ucsd.edu. It has just gone through a 2024 revamp, or connecting with us on any of the social accounts listed on screen. Again, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.